Welcome to Voices from the Abyss. If you're listening tonight, you're not alone. Beneath every stretch of open water, there are depths we've never seen and things we've never discovered. Tonight's story begins in complete darkness, miles below the surface, where something ancient is still moving. So settle in, get comfortable, and listen closely, because far below you, something is awake. 3 divers descend into the deep for one final mission. Only one comes back. But after months on the ocean floor, after hours unaccounted for in the dark, coming home doesn't always mean coming back alone. The sub smelled like instant noodles and wet socks. They were 3 months in, and Max had long since stopped noticing either. "Okay, but hear me out," Tony said, gesturing with his chopsticks in a way that was definitely a safety violation. "The first thing I'm eating when we get back is a steak. Massive, well done, slathered in ketchup." Ray's closed his eyes. "You said that every day for 2 weeks, Solis said, without looking up from his instruments. "Because I mean it more every day." Ray's was running the pre-dive checklist at the table, which drove Tony insane, and Ray's knew it. "Regulator seals," he said, to no one in particular. "Checked," Irwin said immediately, too fast, like he'd been waiting to be asked. Tony pointed a chopstick at him. "Nobody asked you, Irwin." He asked, rhetorically. Irwin looked at Max. Max shrugged. "Don't look at me. I stopped understanding how Tony's brain works around week 6. Joan was leaning against the far wall with her arms crossed, already half into her dry suit, watching Tony with the flat expression she reserved for people being idiots, which, on this crew, was a full-time occupation. "Last dive," she said. "Can we just not do a bit today?" "Last dive!" Tony wheeled on her. "Exactly. Last dive, last chance for Irwin to finally not look like he's about to throw up before we hit the water." "I don't look like that." "You absolutely look like that." "Irwin." Ray's didn't raise his voice. He never had to. "You good?" Irwin straightened. Yeah, I'm good." He wasn't entirely good. His hands gave him away every time. He was checking his wrist seal again, 3 times in a row, fingers going through the motion without him realizing it. But he'd be fine once they were in the water. Whatever made Irwin nervous lived on this side of the airlock, not the other. Joan pushed off the wall and started pulling her hood on, done waiting for the bit to end. "So what's the plan when we surface?" Tony asked the room. "Raise, you callin' your wife?" "Before the subdocks." "Obviously before the subdocks. I'd be offended if you waited." "Irwin? Your mom?" "My parents." "Sure, your parents. Very adult of you." Tony turned. "Max?" "Sleep," Max said. "Actually sleep in an actual bed for approximately 4 days." "Valid? Joan?" Joan didn't look up from her glove seal. "Joan?" Tony added a sickly sweet tone to his voice, trying to be as annoying as possible. "What are you gonna do when you get home? You don't have a partner? You don't have... What do you even do? What are your hobbies? I have hobbies. Name one. Joan looked up. The look on her face could have cored an apple. I'm going home, she said, and something in her voice went briefly, unexpectedly soft. To my dog. The room was quiet for a second. Just a second. Don't, Max said. Tony grinned. What are you gonna teach her? More words? Joan picked up one of Irwin's spare gloves and threw it at him. He caught it, delighted with himself. Ray's sighed, the sigh of a man who had been babysitting 5 grown adults for 3 months. Max watched Joan's face settle back into its usual armor, the softness gone. They cycled through final checks. Ray's, Joan, Irwin, tanks full, comms clipped, lights on. The airlock door sealed with a sound like the world closing. Through the small porthole, Max watched Joan turn back one last time. She found Tony first, raised her middle finger, and held it there while the chamber pressurized, water rising dark around her ankles, and then her knees. Tony put his hand over his heart like he'd been shot. Then the water took her, and they were gone. The first 20 minutes were routine. Max sat at the comm station, one headphone on, one off, half listening to the dive chatter, and half listening to Tony lose badly at cards to Solus. The feed was clear. Ray's calling depths, Irwin confirming, and the occasional sound of Joan's breathing steady, even through her regulator. Visibility's good down here, Ray said. Better than yesterday. Copy that, Max said. Tell Tony we found his steak, Joan said. It's just sitting down here on the ocean floor. Well done, covered in ketchup. He can come get it if he wants. Tony leaned over from the card table without looking up. Tell her I said she can have that one. It went like that for a while. Comfortable. The deep, familiar rhythm of a crew that had lost excitement in the routine. Max was refilling her coffee when Irwin's voice crackled through the feed. Hey, A pause, long enough to break the routine. Rays, you seeing this? Max set the coffee down and put both headphones on. Ray's voice came back even, but slower. Yeah, I see it. See what? Max said. What are you looking at? Nobody answered for a moment. Max could hear their breathing. She could hear the water. There's something at the edge of the light, Joan said. Her voice was different. Joan didn't sound scared, or at least she didn't let it into her voice. But the way she spoke made the back of Max's neck prickle. Something? Max repeated. Can you be more specific? It's... Irwin stopped. Started again. It looks like a person. Tony looked up from his cards. That's not funny, Max said. I'm not being funny. Irwin's voice cracked slightly on the last word. Rays. I see it, Ray said again. He had his calm voice on. He was actively deciding not to alarm anyone. Max had learned to be most afraid of that voice. It's not moving. Could be debris Could be. It moved, Joan said. Silence on the line. It moved, she said again, quieter, like she was saying it more for herself than for others. Okay. Raise. Steady. We're going to... There's another one, Irwin said. Tony was standing now. Solus had turned fully away from his instruments to look at Max. Raise, Max said, and she hated how her voice came out. Talk to me. What do you need? There's... A long exhale. They look like people. That doesn't make sense. You can't... He stopped. Race had never stopped mid-sentence. They don't have suits. No suits? Max repeated, for Solus, for Tony, for the record herself. At this depth? No suits, Reyes confirmed. No equipment. Just... Reyes, Joan's voice, sharp, a warning. I see them. No! Reyes, behind you! And then Irwin made a sound that Max would spend a long time trying to forget. A sound that wasn't quite a scream. It cut off too fast to be a scream. And the comm line dissolved into that noise. Rushing water and static. And then nothing. Silence. Reyes, Max said. Static. Joan! Nothing. Tony's hand landed on her shoulder. She hadn't heard him cross the room. The silence held. 4 hours came and went. Max didn't move from the comm station. Her coffee went cold, and then she forgot it existed. Tony brought her something to eat at some point, and she ate. She didn't taste it. She couldn't have said afterward what it was. They didn't talk about ascending. They didn't talk about anything. At 4 hours, 40 minutes, Solus said, very quietly, Max. And she knew, from the way he said it, that he wasn't going to tell her something she wanted to hear. The longer we stay at this depth, he said, the harder the ascent gets. For us. He paused. We need to think about the sub. I am thinking about the sub, Max said. I'm thinking about the 3 people who are supposed to be on it. Solus didn't push. He went back to his instruments. Tony sat on the floor with his back against the wall, knees up, staring at the middle distance. It was the silliest Max had ever seen him. It looked wrong on him, like a kid who put their shoes on the wrong feet. 5 hours. 5 hours 20. Max was running her thumb over the edge of the comm panel, a repetitive motion she wasn't aware of, when the static shifted. It was subtle. Less white noise, more something underneath. And then a sound that resolved slowly out of the interference, like a shape emerging from fog. Breathing. Ragged, slow, but breathing. Max's hands were on the controls before she'd noticed she was moving. Hello? She said, and hated how desperate it came out. Hello? Can you hear me? Who is this? Identify... A long, crackling pause. and then faint, wrecked, and unmistakably, Max. Tony was on his feet. "Joan!" Max's voice broke clean in half on the single syllable. She didn't try to fix it. "Joan, we hear you. Where are you? What's your position? Are Ray's and Irwin?" Static swallowed the line for a horrible moment. "Just me," Joan said. 2 words. Max felt them like stones in her chest. "Okay," Max said. "Okay, that's okay. Joan, give me your position." They didn't push her. An unspoken agreement formed in the looks passed between Max, Tony, and Solus, while Joan sat wrapped in a thermal blanket with the soup Tony had made, which was terrible. Joan didn't comment on it. She didn't talk about Ray's. She didn't talk about Irwin. She didn't talk about what she'd seen, or what had happened, or the hours between the comm cutting out and the beacon signal finding them. Every time the conversation edged toward it, Joan's eyes went somewhere else. Somewhere far away and deep. And whoever had started edging let it go. There would be time. There would be reports and debriefs and all the official machinery of tragedy grinding into motion. For now, she was here. She was breathing, and she was drinking Tony's terrible soup without complaint. Max sat beside her the whole way up, through the long, slow ascent, watching the pressure readings and the depth numbers fall. She told herself that the hollow feeling in her chest was just grief, just exhaustion, just the particular weight of a mission ending wrong. She told herself that the way Joan sat was just stiffness from the cold. She told herself that the half-second delays, the almost expressions, the eyes that didn't quite track the way they used to. She told herself all of it was shock, was trauma, was the ordinary wreckage a person carries out of something terrible. Max was good at telling herself things. She'd gotten very good at it over the last few hours. She didn't stop being good at it until much later. In a different country, when a dog pressed a button with its nose and the bottom fell out of everything she thought she knew. Joan's apartment was exactly what Max would have expected. Small and neat, but in a careless way. A leather jacket over the back of a chair, boots by the door, a bookshelf with more DVDs than books. The walls were mostly bare, except for one photograph above the couch. Joan, younger, grinning with salt-stiff hair on some beach, sunburned and squinting into the camera like it had offended her. Max had insisted on coming in. "Just for a minute," she said. "Just to make sure you're settled." Joan had let her, which was how Max knew she wasn't entirely herself yet. The old Joan would have rolled her eyes and said she'd been settling herself since she was 19. Thanks. A note on the kitchen counter said Ruby was an angel. She's been fed, so excited for you to be home. Carla, with a hand-drawn heart underneath it. The neighbor who'd been watching her. Max clocked the note subconsciously. The small, ordinary evidence of a life continued in someone's absence. the dog fed and walked and loved by proxy, waiting for its person to come back. Ruby was in the kitchen. Max heard her nails on the tile, the excited scramble of an animal who knew the sound of its person coming through the door. She'd imagined this moment actually, during the long, awful hours on the sub. Joan's dog losing her mind with happiness. Something uncomplicated and good at the end of it all. Ruby came around the corner fast, already mid-leap, and then stopped. All 4 feet on the ground, sudden and complete, like something had reached down and switched her off. She was a medium-sized mutt, the kind that looked like several different dog breeds all in one. Floppy ears with a gray muzzle that suggested some years on her. She stood at the edge of the kitchen and looked at Joan. Joan crouched down and held out her hand. "Hey, girl," she said. "Hey, Ruby." Ruby didn't move. Her nose was working. Max could see it from across the room, the nostrils pulling fast, processing something, and what she was finding, she didn't like. The fur along her spine was standing in a slow ridge, starting at the neck and traveling down. A sound built in her chest, low and continuous, a warning frequency. "Hey," Joan said again, softer. "It's me." Ruby took 1 step back. Max stood very still. She watched Joan's outstretched hand, and she watched Ruby. She felt the heaviness in her chest that she'd been calling grief and exhaustion deepen. Ruby had been fine for months, by all accounts. Eating, sleeping, happy enough with Carla and whoever else had taken shifts. No separation anxiety, no destruction, no distress. Just a dog waiting for its person. Until now. Until this exact moment. Until Joan walked through the door. Joan lowered her hand slowly. For a moment, nobody moved. Ruby's growl held, low and unbroken. Her eyes were fixed on Joan with an expression Max had never seen on a dog before. Dogs weren't supposed to look like that. Weren't supposed to carry that particular combination of recognition and terror, the look that knew exactly what it was seeing and wanted no part of it. Then Ruby turned. She crossed to the communication board on the wall. The grid of buttons with their small picture labels, the ones Joan had spent months teaching her, the ones that were supposed to be for outside, and play, and food, and love you. And she pressed one with her nose. The button's speaker crackled. Not. A pause. Ruby's eyes went back to Joan. "Mom." Joan hadn't moved. She was still crouched on the floor, hand at her side, and her face was blank. That was the most frightening thing Max had seen in a day full of frightening things, because Joan's face always had something behind it. Ruby pressed 2 more buttons, slow and deliberate, the way she had been taught. Wrong. Smell. The room was very quiet. Max looked at Joan. Joan was already looking at her. And in the half-second before Joan's expression shifted into something that wasn't quite a smile, but hinted at one, Max had time to think about the hours between the comm cutting out and the beacon finding them. The hours Joan had never accounted for. The way her arms had come up slow in the airlock, the half-second delays, the eyes that didn't track right. The suit had been completely, perfectly intact. Ruby pressed one final button. Skin. Max didn't move. Joan tilted her head, just slightly, just a few degrees past the angle a person's head tilts, and looked at Max with Joan's eyes in Joan's face, and smiled with Joan's mouth. "It's okay," she said. Ruby was pressed into the far corner of the kitchen, silent now, watching. "Max." Joan's voice was patient, almost warm, but one of her eyes took just a little too long to meet Max's gaze. "It's me." Outside the window, the city moved and breathed, indifferent and bright. Max looked at Ruby. Ruby looked at Max. Joan didn't blink. Thank you for listening to Voices from the Abyss. If you enjoyed tonight's story, make sure to follow so you don't miss what rises next. And if you find yourself near the water, listening, just remember, not everything beneath the surface is asleep. Good night.